We wanted to understand what it's like to manage children's asthma in the US, looking specifically at two places, St. Louis, Missouri, and Gainesville, Florida. So first, we talked to caregivers about what it's like caring for a child with asthma. Next, we talked to asthma doctors and other medical providers about the challenges they see. And finally, we talked to kids about what it was like for them to manage asthma. This is what we found. Asthma is really hard to manage. For many caregivers we spoke to, asthma could come suddenly out of the blue, and it was frightening and hard to predict or understand. One caregiver in St. Louis told us how she woke up at night to her husband shouting. She told us all of a sudden he just seen Kaylee fall, and when she fell, that's when he ran and picked her up, and he was like, "Call 911." Asthma symptoms could be confusing to identify. Kids told us about how their panicking made them breathless, so they needed an inhaler, and getting asthma made them scared and panicked, so they got even more breathless. One boy said, "That's mostly just one thing that scares me, is just dying of suffocation." Difficulties with housing meant that mold, dust, and pests were often making children sick, but financial issues meant that moving wasn't easy either. Sometimes caregivers felt trapped in environments that were making their children sick, and families often had many other medical or social issues that overwhelmed asthma care. When you have a mom with cancer, another child with autism, and your apartment burned down, life can be about dealing with the biggest issues when they come. This also means that caregivers need to prioritize the limited time in primary care visits for the issues that were biggest in the moment. And medical systems could make it hard for families to get the care they needed. Caregivers and providers told us about medical systems that were disconnected and hard to navigate. They could find it difficult to get referred to specialists or weren't aware of the need for primary or specialist care as a part of asthma control. So families often ended up using urgent or emergency care. Meanwhile, many children's asthma seemed undertreated. The providers we talked to mainly talked about pharmaceuticals as the most important way of managing asthma. But caregivers used a much broader range of strategies to manage their children's asthma. These included staying vigilant and monitoring children by watching and listening for symptoms, controlling children's environments through things like cleaning, regulating air, or controlling others smoking, controlling children's behavior by encouraging or restricting activities or places to avoid triggering exacerbations, treating children's symptoms with albuterol or home remedies, and managing children's emotions by calming and comforting. Children also have to and do take on a lot of the work for asthma management. Children's self-management included identifying symptoms of asthma, deciding what to do about their symptoms, and taking medication. These things are a lot, but doctors and even caregivers didn't always recognize how much work children do to care for their asthma. Children also figured out their own strategies. For example, lots of children talked about drinking water. Sometimes it seemed like kids drank water because they didn't have an inhaler handy. For some kids, their inhaler might be far away, at the nurse's office, in a locker room, or even at home. The problem is that these strategies are aimed at symptoms. They allow families to keep children breathing, but asthma is caused by an underlying invisible inflammation in children's airways, and that inflammation is still there, waiting to bring on another asthma attack. And caregiver strategies to manage asthma could be very challenging, stressful, and time-consuming. Doctors didn't always see or understand all the work they're doing. Because caregivers had such expert knowledge of their child's body, medications, and triggers, a lot of caregivers felt very alone in managing asthma. This knowledge was not easy to share with other people. Most providers we talked to worried about seeing so many kids sick with asthma in their communities and about how poor environments and undertreatment were contributing to many emergency visits and hospitalizations. They worry that many caregivers are missing out on the education and support they deserve. Some providers also recognize how complex asthma management is, especially when families are impacted by economic inequalities and structural racism. Some of these providers work to create broader solutions for patients, such as social or legal support, but many providers were limited by their medical systems. But school nurses we spoke to shared that because they get to know kids and families so well, they do a lot of work to identify sick kids and help connect families to primary care and provide education. Depending on your school, the school nurse could be a great resource for more help with managing asthma. So what can caregivers do? First, check with your doctor about an asthma control test to check if your child's symptoms might be a concern. Whether your child needs controller medication, if they're on the right dose and taking it the right number of times a day, and if your child has an up-to-date asthma action plan. Connect with your school nurse for support with asthma management. Caregivers can find free resources and community support through the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, AAFA.org. For more information about this study, visit our website. And thank you to all providers, caregivers, and families who participated in this study.